I had the name Marshal Law, and I had a very rough, rudimentary sketch of the character, and the notes I sent to Pat Mills were essentially Marshal Law in those days, in the early stages, was kind of like Mad Max. There were lots of wild cars, and it was a kind of post-apocalyptic blasted background, that type of thing. And we submitted it to Archie Goodwin, who was responsible for Epic Comics at Marvel. So it's creator-owned, so that was very important. And Archie liked it in that form, in the kind of Mad Max form. But it took a year to get a contract out of Marvel. So in that year, Pat and I were talking about it, and one day he rang me up and he said, I keep looking at this character and thinking, what if he hunted superheroes? And I corrected, I said, I don't mean supervillains. I went, no, superhero, because Pat didn't grow up with American comics at all. He's really not familiar with them, and at the time he actually hated the whole kind of Green Lantern business, that type of stuff. And I was thinking about it, well, that's really odd, that's really quite strange, that's a good idea. So we kept the plot, but we made Law a hero hunter, and that enlarged the thing and made it much more exciting. And Archie was very good about it. He liked the idea, and he let us run with it. And what happened with Law from that point on was it just became increasingly excessive. The more people seemed to enjoy that dark black comedy violence, the more we gave it to them. The Top Shelf, I believe somewhere in 2009, are producing a complete Marshal Law collection, and it will be everything we've ever done, all the crossovers and little extra bits we did for previous collections. There may be some new stuff in it. We'll see how that goes. It'll be definitive. It'll be the lot, and it'll be the best looking and the best photograph collection. I've got most of the original art for Marshal Law, which I kept. So anything that needs reshooting, we can go back to. And Pat and I are really looking forward to it. We were assembling the material and looking back on it, and we were thinking, Jesus, some of the stories, like Secret Tribunal, which came from Dark Horse, which not many people would have seen, it had a very low print run, was one of the wilder ones. It's the most explicit, the most violent, probably it's pretty funny as well. It was great revisiting the material. I'd kind of forgotten how far we'd taken it, because we seem to live in slightly more reactionary days nowadays, and it seems more outrageous than it did at the time. The Chris Darrell's Marshal Law collection came about. Well, Chris, actually, the first review that Marshal Law ever had back in 1987 came from the Starros report, which was passed on to us, which Chris did as a kind of fanzine report, I guess, just reviewing new comics, and he gave us a great review, and it was really encouraging. And then cut to years later, and he's formed with his partner Top Shelf, and because Alan Moore and I have moved League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to Top Shelf, and the kind of gosh knockabout consortium, Marshal Law came up in conversation, and there'd been talk at Wildstorm were doing a Marshal Law collection, but I don't think DC had liked the character very much, so it kind of fell apart. And I guess that's sort of understandable, as most of the pot shots we took it with a character were often at DC material. But it grew out of Chris liking the strip and it being available. We've kept the rights to it, so it was a matter of him clearing all the crossover connected stories, which involve lots of Clive Barker and Eric Larson, but everyone's been cool, it seems, so far. The Marshal Law crossover stories, now they have a kind of an odd origin. There was talk way back when we did 6 Marshal Law comics, which became Fear and Loathing, the first collection. The 7th one was Marshal Law Takes Manhattan, which was going to be a Marshal Law versus Punisher book. Somehow that came up in conversation. Tom DeFalco, who was the Marvel boss at the time, gave permission for it. Punisher was huge back in those days. It would have been about 1990, I guess, somewhere around about then, 89, 90. Pat wasn't comfortable with it though. And he did say to me at one point, well, if you want to do a Law Punisher crossover with another writer, do it. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound so good. And I said, well, why don't we do a character like the Punisher? Just do what we did with the other characters we've used. Kind of like Captain America, or at least superheroes. So we did the Persecutor, and Marvel were cool about that. So that was the first non-crossover. Then we got the kind of idea. Clive Barker had written an introduction to the Fear and Loathing collection, so the Pinhead crossover grew out of that connection. And then it was kind of stumbling about, somehow I was asked to do a Mask mini-series for Dark Horse, and I wanted to do more martial law, so we ended up doing a martial law crossover. So it's a series of just a chain of accidents, really. There was no design to them. Martial law has had movie interest since about 1988, about a year after it first appeared. And what's happened is people get interested and they blow hot and cold on it. They look at it closely, but first of all they think it's a kind of Punisher thing. One guy in the very early stages, one director wanted to do it, and it reminded me of hearing Mark Miller talk about the Wanted film, because they wanted to do martial law without superheroes and without costumes. And I thought, what is the point? In our case, what is the point? You know, it doesn't work. And then you cut over the years, there have been various people, including Roger Corman, wanted to buy it, which was kind of amused us. But we didn't sell it to any of these people. Last year, McGee was going to do it, or was interested in it, but then he went off and he's doing the Terminator trilogy now. So, and at the moment there's Nick Percival, who did the Corbyn's website, is interested in doing a CGI version. But the great thing now is there's more chance of it happening now than there was back in the 80s, because actually filming it in the 80s was damn sight more expensive and difficult. And post Sin City and 300, you can see how the excess of martial law, even an R-rated film, is not an impossibility. There's an audience out there. And also people understand a lot more about superheroes than they ever did back in the late 80s. There's far more movies, and movies in fact are so numerous, it's almost like the westerns were when I was a kid. It's a genre, it's a regular thing, there's several a year. So we kind of keep our fingers crossed, I suppose, that something will happen and there'll be someone good doing it, and it'll be very sexy and violent, which is the version I'd like to see of it. I don't really want to see a Punisher version of martial law. Doing new martial law is always an entertaining thought. The problem we had at the very end, when we did, I think the last one was Savage Dragon crossover, and it came out in black and white, which was, it was great that it came out, but it was the only black and white one we did. The problem we found was paying me to do the painted artwork, as it had originally begun, martial law, was more and more difficult. There was no one who wanted to stomp up the money to do it. And Pat's got his big series, Requiem and so on, he does in France. And I'm doing League pretty continuously, and I'm so damn slow. So it's not impossible, but when it will happen, I couldn't really say. But we do have, coming out from Titan Books in September of this year, a martial law paperback called Origins, which is what it sounds like. One of it's two novellas that were written for the Corbyn's martial law website some years ago. One had been previously published and one has not ever been published, so they appear with some new illustrations and some stuff that's been seen before, but it's in text form, and it works really well. He's a great pulp sort of character martial law, so he works terrifically in text form.